Funding for Made in Pennsylvania provided by the Pennsylvania Public Television Network.
Pennsylvania has always been recognized for its strength in manufacturing. But Pennsylvania plants produce much more than just iron and steel. Some of the most recognizable products in the world are made right here in the Commonwealth. But this story goes beyond simply showing how these items are made. It chronicles the success stories of some of our nation's most creative entrepreneurs. Look in your child's toy box, your freezer, your cupboard, your church, your pocket, your other pocket, your fire station, and your favorite amusement park. And chances are you'll find something that's made in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has a state bird, a state tree, a state flower. But did you know that Pennsylvania also has a state toy? Named the official state toy of Pennsylvania on November 4th, 2001, the Slinky has been walking downstairs, alone or in pairs, since 1945.
What walks downstairs alone or in pairs and makes a slinkety sound? A spring, a marvelous thing. Everyone knows it's Slinky. It's Slinky.
Children since the 40s have been singing along with the Slinky's jingle, which is the longest continuously running national campaign on television.
It's fun for a girl and a boy.
But how did the initial idea for the Slinky first spring to mind? Betty James, wife of the late Richard James, an engineer for the United States Navy, remembers.
In 1943, my husband, who was a mechanical engineer, went out on a trial run of a ship as a test engineer. And while he was out there, a torsion spring fell off a table, and it bounced around. And he came home and he said, you know, I think if I can get the right properties in the wire and the right tension, I can make it walk down steps. And I wasn't too sure about that, but he did it. And the neighbor children all liked it, and so we had it patented. And
now that Betty and Richard James had a hit with the kids in the neighborhood, all they needed was a place to sell it.
But we took it around to different stores and tried to sell it, and nobody was interested. But finally, Gimbel's store in Philadelphia gave us the end of a counter in 1945, and we had 400 pieces of Slinky that he had had made, and they sold in 90 minutes, and that was the beginning of Slinky.
The Slinky has always been a made-in-Pennsylvania product. James Industries' first home was near Philadelphia, in Germantown, over a small garage. Soon, the James family had made enough money to buy a building in Clifton Heights, Pennsylvania, and another one in Paoli. But it was Hollidaysburg that became the true home of the Slinky.
So one night I got a call from a local pharmacist, and he said, could I meet him the next morning down here at Beaver Street? And I said, yes. And I came down this big area of nice flat land, and he said, how many acres do you need? Now, I have absolutely no conception of acres. And I thought, oh, what do I say? I said 6, because I had 6 children. That sounded like a good number. So he said, well, do you think $1 would be too much? And this ground was given to us by Hollidaysburg for $1.
So for $1, then the price of one Slinky, James Industries bought 6 acres of land and settled into their new home. Over the years, absolutely nothing has changed with the original design of the Slinky. It is still manufactured on the same equipment designed by Richard James in the early 40s. Of course, since Slinky's sales have bounced up to almost 300 million toys, the James Industries employees in Hollidaysburg work 3 shifts to keep those Slinkies walking off the assembly line and onto store shelves around the world. But it has been discovered that the Slinky can do a lot more than just walk downstairs. The Slinky has been used as a therapy tool to build coordination. It's even been sent into outer space to help in a study on gravity. Richard and Betty's son, Tom James, sales manager for James Industries, has heard of many creative uses for his family's favorite toy.
Gutter guards. We have people use Slinkies in windows and on walls to keep pigeons off. In the Vietnam War, they took one end and threw it up over a tree and would hook the other end to the radio for a better antenna.
Over the years, new Slinky products started springing up in stores, including Slinky Pets and Silly Bob. There's even a gold-plated Slinky for the executive's desk, and Slinkies imprinted with company logos for promotions and giveaways. And of course, who can forget about Silly Eyes? One of James Industries' original Slinky characters was a pull toy called the Slinky Dog. 50 years after the Slinky Dog was originally introduced to the market, it sprang right back to the top as a result of the Disney movie Toy Story.
This guy has been very good to us, both times. The first time as a dog, a different design, and this time as a Toy Story dog, Slink.
The Slinky has received many incredible honors over the years. Besides being named the official state toy of Pennsylvania, the Slinky was one of the very first toys ever to be commemorated on a U.S. postage stamp. Just what is it about the Slinky that has captured the attention of children and adults for more than 5 decades? Both Betty James and her son Tom agree that there's nothing to it.
In the toy business, every year that I can remember for 37 years, the big motto at the toy show was, we're going back to basics. And that gets pretty funny after the first couple of decades when they keep saying the same thing, back to basics. Well, we're the basic. I mean, you can't get any more basic than a piece of wire. It's so simple. It's so amazingly, basically simple. It's like the wheel. There's nothing to it, and yet we're very, very fortunate to be the people that have nothing and did well with it.
It started out as the simplest of ideas, and it became a toy, an icon, even a movie star. What's next for the Slinky? The possibilities seem endless.
It always shocks us, and even today it shocks us as to how popular it is. As long as they're kids, there should be Slinkies.
You ought to get a Slinky.
What is it about the Zippo lighter that clicks with so many people? The fire started burning right here in Bradford, Pennsylvania, when a similar lighter sparked the interest of Pennsylvania resident George Blaisdell, grandfather of George Blaisdell Duke, present chairman of the board for Zippo.
In the late 20s, my grandfather had the opportunity to become involved with a lighter from Austria. This lighter right here is the lighter my grandfather originally got involved with. It is the lighter that he developed the Zippo lighter from. It's a lighter that was imported from Austria that he was a distributor for, and it's a very simple lighter, as you can see. The lid is removed and it has a chimney around a wick with the wheel here that ignites the flint, which ignites the wick. It's a very crude looking lighter, as you can see, and once you're done using the lighter, you simply put the top back on. Grandpa took this idea and developed the Zippo from it. And what he did was he put a hinge on the case, as you see here, as well as what we call a cam that is operated by a spring. This allows the lighter to close and open. One of the nice things about a Zippo that's different from this lighter, it is a one-hand operation.
When the company first began in 1932, the first Zippo lighters were made in a room over a garage in Bradford. Just 10 employees made each Zippo lighter by hand. The company struggled for years, and it wasn't until World War II that the Zippo lighter really caught on like wildfire.
And finally, in World War II, that's when the lighter really took off, because during World War II, all of the production that Grandpa made went to the U.S. government for our GIs overseas. Through the use of Zippo in the overseas markets with the GIs and all, it became a world-renowned product. It became a product that every GI wanted and every GI had as a friend in his foxhole to to light a fire, to, I guess, give him comfort, to light his cigarettes. After World War II, Zippo was a world-renowned product. People all over the world knew what Zippo was.
Thanks to the GIs and the lighter's fame in World War II, the once flickering business exploded into a multi-million-dollar company.
I'll blow your lighter out too, I will.
No, you won't. It's a Zippo, the lighter that's really windproof. Prove it yourself.
Try the fan test. See how Zippo lights with a zip, even in wind. And Zippo offers you free service for life.
That same Zippo company that once made individual lighters by hand has turned out more than 300 million lighters to date. And Zippo has grown from a 10-employee business into the largest single employer in Bradford, with more than 720 workers. Time has certainly proven that you don't have to be a soldier to appreciate a Zippo, and that there's not always smoke where there's fire. Smokers and non-smokers alike have made the Zippo lighter one of America's favorite collectibles. Each year, thousands of Zippo enthusiasts make the trip to the Visitor Center in Bradford, where collectors from all around the world come to salute the Zippo lighter. Linda Maybon, Zippo historian and museum curator, can attest to the lighter's widespread collectability.
I get to meet many people from all walks of life and all over the world. And what is really amazing is that the people that just love Zippo, they just can't wait to get here. Now, we are a small area, and we are not adjacent to a 4-lane, and we have a small airport. But it's amazing what people will do to get to Bradford.
Among the Visitor Center's many exhibits is the Zippo flag, which is made up of 3,393 individual red, white, and blue Zippo lighters. Go a little deeper into the museum and see where Zippo keeps the fire burning, so to speak. Zippo owners depend on the lighter's lifetime guarantee and the promise that if it breaks, they'll fix it for free. Here, visitors to the museum can look in on the Zippo Repair Clinic, where the flicks and clicks are restored to working order. Just what is it that keeps the Zippo lighter burning with such popularity that this has become the most visited museum in Pennsylvania?
One of the things that makes it so collectible, too, is all of the different finishes and the different images and the different adornment, shall we say, that we put on the outside of it. We commonly refer to the Zippo lighter as pocket art. And people say, well, how is it pocket art? Well, if you look at all the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of different designs, whether they be company designs, whether they be outdoor designs, whether it's a picture of a dog or whether it's a picture of a car, there is always something, there's always some design that appeals to somebody and they like to collect it.
Just how hot a collectible is the Zippo lighter? Like any collectible, age and condition are major considerations.
This is the original 1933 first production lighter. It is completely square. It's cut from brass tubing. The hinge is completely attached to the outside. It's what we call the outside hinge. Many people get confused. If they see the barrels protruding, they think it's an outside hinge. That's not the case. The entire hinge and the flanges are attached. It has no patent number on it. It says patent pending because we did not get the patent for the Zippo until 1936. On the collector's market, this lighter in mint or near mint condition would bring $10,000 to $12,000. It's very well sought after, and this is actually the lighter that made Zippo what it is today.
Thousands upon thousands of collectors attended this year's annual Zippo Case Swap Meet, hosted right here in Bradford.
This is our first time at a swap meet. So we've been planning this for, I guess, a year. And we love Zippos. We've been collecting since '87, and we just gone nuts over it. I cross-stitch. Dana made his car. We're just totally into it. All our displays, we keep them on our dining room wall. I mean, and all my friends just think I'm really nuts. And I get real nervous because people say, you know, what do you guys do for fun? You know, and it's like, collect Zippos. But it's a great thing to collect because, like Zippo, I don't think knows how many different kinds and how many. Every time you turn around, you see a Zippo that you've never seen before. And it's so exciting. I love it.
On the wheel, like that. That's the starting position.
Bas van Esdonk traveled halfway around the world to Bradford for this year's swap meet.
It's different from what I'm used to. I've been to European swap meets because they organize them as well, but they're much smaller. And here you can find really rare lighters you can't find in Europe. It's an American thing, and that's really strange, but really cool.
It is an American thing. In fact, it's Americana at its best. But Zippo is not the only collectible American icon made in Bradford, Pennsylvania. In 1905, Case Knives moved into Bradford, and in the early 1990s, Zippo purchased Case Knives, merging the creators of two of America's favorite collectibles into one sharp company. The history of Case Knives begins with the Case family. John Sullivan, Director of Marketing for W.R. Case & Sons Cutlery, explains.
We started as Case brothers, and then, you know, as with any family company, sometimes maybe one brother doesn't get along with another brother, and so they went off and started their own company. And that's really how W.R. Case & Sons started. There were four brothers, and one of the brothers was W.R. Case, and his son was a salesman, and he was being very successful as a salesman and thought he could do better with his own company than being part of Case Brothers, so he and his dad started W.R. Case & Sons.
John Russell Case, successful salesman that he was, thought that he could give his business, W.R. Case & Sons Cutlery, an edge over his relative's earlier established knife company, known as Case Brothers. Case historian and archivist Shirley Boser describes the significance of the face of Case.
Because John Russell was a young man, and he was just starting out in business, and they wanted their company to have the older, more established look, because his company was competing with other companies, his uncle's companies, and other family members. He wanted to make sure that his company had an older, more established look. And he had his picture and his father's picture, and then in the middle he had Job Case, his grandfather's picture, in real big. In the top of the oval he put down, established in 1847, and that was his father's birth date.
The idea worked, and soon W.R. Case & Sons Cutlery whittled away the competition, rapidly becoming the most respected and collected knife manufacturer in the country. Even in the early days of the company, Case knives were known for their handmade craftsmanship and natural materials, and not much has changed.
We might have better grinding machines and better equipment, but we still have the hand operations. All that, we give it that extra kiss that they need to make it a Case knife.
Case associate Larry Saar has had a hand in handcrafting Case knives for over 34 years.
It comes in a coil of steel. Then they go to the presses and they press out the blades, springs, and then the brass, they have to press out the brass for the scales, nickel silver for bolsters. And then your blades and your springs go to heat treat. Then they go through the taper grinders or whatever grinders they have to. And that's to grind them down to the thickness and edges and everything on them. Then from there they go to the polishing bowls, and they're a big vibrating bowl. Has like little rocks in it, and they have a paste or something they throw in there, and the little water drips on it, and they run in there for so many hours. And they come out and then go down a track into what they call a heater. It looks like sawdust in it, a dryer. And they run through there and dry them. And they come out in a big pan. Then we have people sort them, look for them for, you know, if there's any scratches on them or bad marks, and separate them there. You color the backs first. Then you turn bolsters. You hard buff, grease buff, and they go on to the finishing side. And on the finishing side, they get over there, the fronts of the knife, they gloss buff the fronts of the knife, and makes it real shiny and pretty. And back to the girls at the wrap and pack table, they clean them up a little bit better, oil them, check them, make sure they walk and talk, and it's all really all hand work on them.
Initially, when Case started manufacturing knives in the early century, they were made strictly to be a utility item. They were not created with collectors in mind.
When Case started as a company, we didn't build knives to be collectible. They're working tools, and each knife had its purpose and function. And sure, there were dressier models with a pearl handle as opposed to a wooden or a plastic handle. But over time, we started to realize that people were starting this sort of collecting phenomenon.
Thousands of collectors flock to Bradford, Pennsylvania each summer for the Zippo Case swap meet. And it's clear that as these two groups of collectors walk and talk together, they're really starting to click.
Folks care so much about what we build, about the knives we make. So it provides some interesting challenges too. If somebody collects your knives, they're your biggest fans, and they're also your toughest critics. So I mean, it keeps us sharp. Pardon the pun. Keeps us pointed in the right direction.
Since the tragic events of September 11th, firefighting has become one of the most respected professions in the country. And one Pennsylvania company has become one of the most respected manufacturers of fire trucks in the world. KME, or Kovach Mobile Equipment, began in 1946 when John Sonny Kovach Jr. opened a small two-car repair shop in Nesquehoning, Pennsylvania, following his return from military duty in World War II. Over the next 2.5 decades, Sonny acquired more land and took on more automobile franchises. But the business really caught fire when KME entered the field of specialty manufacturing. Sonny's son, John Kovach III, now the CEO of KME Fire Apparatus, explains.
At that time, the fire industry was a very close-knit organization, as it is somewhat today. But you couldn't just come in. You had to buy an existing manufacturer to get into this business. We bought a small manufacturer in a local town, Berwick. It was KME Fire Apparatus. From that, we purchased the assets of the Mack fire truck line out of Allentown, and we continued to grow. We had several other acquisitions in the fire industry, including Grumman Emergency Products, and a lot of the assets from American LaFrance. We had all of the pieces, and we needed an identity, and we incorporated under Kovach Mobile Equipment, or KME Fire Apparatus, largest privately held fire truck manufacturer in the country.
KME's trucks can be found fighting fires worldwide, with trucks as far away as Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Central and South America, in addition to those manufactured for firefighters right here in Pennsylvania. So what is it that makes KME Fire Apparatus so popular with firefighters around the world?
I believe where we've come from is being able to give the customer what they want, not tell the customer what we have.
Each and every one of the fire trucks manufactured by KME are custom built according to the customer's requests. More than 300 different cab and chassis combinations are available to meet the needs of individual fire organizations. KME is also known for taking aerial strength to new heights, anywhere from 55 to 121 feet to be exact. To ensure the ultimate in safety, KME performs extensive proof load testing on all ladders. Pete Horachak, Aerial Product Manager for KME Fire Apparatus, describes the importance of the testing.
And what it's doing is assuring us and our customers that the aerial device and design meets our structural safety factor of 2 to 1. Our aerial device is rated for a 50-mile-an-hour wind load and a 1/4 inch of ice, and as you can see, we're putting 4,677 pounds on the structure at 0 degrees fully extended. far, far above our standard operating load range, and it's proving the integrity of the design.
In addition to testing the aerials, KME also tests the ability of its vehicles to travel rough terrain. Dave Kranak, product manager of KME's Airport Product Group, explains.
What you're looking at here is what's considered an ARF vehicle, Airport Rescue and Firefighting Vehicle. These vehicles are designed per the FAA advisory requirements, and the test we're performing here is a 30-degree tilt table test. The reason for this test is to prove that the vehicle can perform properly in rugged terrain. Generally, airport crashes are not on the runway, they're off runway, and there's a lot of plateaus and grades that can be encountered when the vehicle needs to respond to those sorts of accidents. The truck is designed with an extremely low center of gravity and water tank. Regardless of the height of the truck or the overall look of the vehicle, the water tank sits low to the frame rail, and the actual center of gravity is quite low to the ground. Therefore, when the vehicle is tilted, the center of gravity is low enough that the forces, gravity forces are straight down rather than off to the side.
KME's attention to detail and emphasis on safety have made the company an international success in the fire and rescue industry. But even though they have satellite offices in New York, Virginia, Massachusetts, and California, the Kovach organization's heart and headquarters are still nestled in Nesquehoning, Pennsylvania.
Really, my father's been the most instrumental person in the growth of Nesquehoning as we know it today. He's brought a lot of industry into Nesquehoning besides our manufacturing facility.
A revered profession, a respected organization. KME Fire Apparatus has proven time and time again to be dependable, reliable, and powerful, just like the heroes who drive their trucks. Throughout history, bells have symbolized liberty, peace, and spirituality. Schulmerich Carillons has combined art, music, and technology to make the beauty of bells a sound investment for churches, schools, and other organizations around the world. Just as the Liberty Bell symbolizes a powerful American tradition, the American dream had a certain ring to it for a young entrepreneur in the 1930s. George Schulmerich, then a young electronics engineer, often used his expertise to install sound systems in churches. But during the war years, cast bells were especially costly to manufacture. Metals such as copper and tin were cast into the war effort and not into cast bells. Wishing to create a less expensive alternative, Schulmerich fine-tuned his engineering skills and developed the world's first electronic carillon. George Schulmerich had his first big break with the instrument when Father Flanagan installed a system in the tower at Boys Town in Nebraska. A few years later, in 1947, a Schulmerich carillon installed at the top of the Empire State Building chimed a holiday concert which could be heard almost 20 miles away. Today, Schulmerich carillons continue to ring around the world, producing the rich sound of real cast bells for approximately 1/10 the price. In 1962, Schulmerich Carillons added another product to their ensemble, placing the power of music in the palm of your hand. As the first American producer of handbells, Schulmerich Carillons truly set the tone for perfection in handbells.
Not only is the bell a musical instrument, but if you've looked at the surface, the outside surface of it, we're producing a piece of art. We've been producing them now for 40 years, and we've started out with a couple octaves, and it's grown to the point where we now produce a full 7 octaves of bells, which is 85 bells all told, from a C2, which is about yay big, and a C9, which is gets lost in my hand.
Jim Murray demonstrates the difference in size and in scale between Schulmerich's smallest handbell and their largest.
We make 85 different notes that go anywhere from our highest note, which is a C9 that weighs several ounces, to our C2, which is the lowest note that we make, that weighs 19 pounds.
The bells, which are cast from bell metal, consisting of 80% copper to 20% tin, are manufactured to certain sizes and tolerances. But there's much more to producing a handbell than simply machining. Jim Murray briefly explains the careful creation of a Schulmerich handbell.
Each bell is in fact an individual, and they have to be treated thusly. Two bells that are machined of exactly the same physical dimensions rarely ever exhibit the same frequency or sound. So bells cannot be made to a size. They have to be turned. The bells, as they come out of the CNC, are actually at that point a machine part. At that point, the bell maker himself, or the craftsman, will be determining using a scope rather than any other measuring instrument where the frequency of the bell is. And it's up to them to determine how much material and what area of the bell that they have to remove material from to bring it to its correct tolerance and frequency. Once the bell is tuned to the proper frequency, the tuner then sets the bell up and looks for what we call the strike point in a bell. Each bell has a point in it which will give you a clearer, better sound than any other point in that bell. When the bells are completely assembled and they're ready for final inspection, the supervisor of the department will listen to each bell for the sound as far as the clarity is concerned and the brightness, and we'll check it on the scope to make sure that the frequency is in tolerance for each particular note that we do.
Schulmerich handbells have been known for decades for their smooth sound and perfect pitch. In harmony with their line of handbells, Schulmerich Carillons introduced the new Melody Chime in 1999. Scott Edgell, district manager of Schulmerich Carillons, explains the beauty of the new instrument.
This is what we call our Melody Chime instruments. It's a handheld chime, which was developed for two reasons. One is a cost alternative to handbells, and then also to add an additional voice for choirs that like to ring.
Whether calling people together for worship or sounding a song of unity, one note will always ring true. Schulmerich Carillons in Sellersville, Pennsylvania, brings music to everyone's ears. Celestial patterns, worldly beauty. Reflected in each piece of Campbell Pottery is a delicate balance of art and science, and the vision of a man who has made a career of combining creativity and chemistry. Bill Campbell, owner and creator of Campbell Pottery, started his professional life on a much more precise mathematical course. After earning an associate's degree in engineering from Flint Community College in Michigan, he then spent 6 years working in middle management for the Buick Motor Company. But it wasn't until he enrolled in a pottery class that he discovered his true passion and the artist within.
I really like clay. When I first touched clay, it was almost like I'd always done it. You know, the act of throwing clay comes very hard to some people. But within 10 weeks, I was able to center clay and move it around and begin to make some pretty good things. By the time I actually got going at college, I could probably throw as good as my teacher.
Campbell continued his education, earning a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania in 1974, then entering graduate school at Virginia Commonwealth University, where he met his wife, Jane.
I signed up for school and I never looked back. I went to school for another 5 years. Graduated from Edinburgh and then did another year of graduate school down in Virginia, where I met my wife. which is the best thing I got out of Virginia.
The couple eventually moved back to the Edinburgh area, setting up their studios in nearby Cambridge Springs.
When I first came here, everything that I made was made on this potter's wheel.
But it didn't take long before the demand for Campbell Pottery created the need for a much more mechanical and efficient production process. That process still starts here at the potter's wheel, where Bill Campbell creates the original design for each piece. The clay that is used to mass-produce Bill Campbell's designs also begins right here in the studios as a slurry of dirt and water. That mixture is then compressed into a solid form. The clay is then loaded onto presses or poured into molds of Bill Campbell's original designs. The presses and molds represent the mechanics behind the art, which allow an efficiency of production not possible with a potter's wheel alone. After being molded and pressed into shape, the newly formed creations are retouched, washed, filed, and decorated with practical adornments. The finishing touch, and the trademark of Campbell Pottery, is the addition of the beautiful glazes. This is the art that Bill Campbell has down to a science.
Having a background in mechanics and engineering was very useful to me. You know, I could use that, and I understood the materials. Like, I understand, you know, where silica and the feldspars all come from, and the differences that are in them, and I understand enough about how to handle the chemistry that I can move those numbers around, and I can do calculations, and I can make beautiful glazes.
The glazes, when wet, appear to create only the dullest of colors. However, the cobalt, iron, copper, and other minerals in the glazes come alive when fired in the kiln, developing into beautiful blues, beiges, and greens. The pieces produced at Campbell Pottery are certainly considered by many to be collector's items. But for Bill Campbell, the beauty of his craft is in its practicality.
I don't want to make art. I never have. You know, one of the things that I found myself at odds with people when I was going to school with was they wanted me to make art, you know, and I wanted to make pottery. And I would rather fill somebody's cupboard with stuff that they use in their day-to-day rituals, you know, than try to make something that sits in a pedestal in an art museum or, you know, in a special place with a light on it in somebody's house. I want them to wash it. I want them to eat from it. I want them to touch it to their lips. I want them to hold it, you know, with warm liquid in it. I want it to be, you know, part of their stuff, things that they do every day, and that's my object, you know. I want the stuff to be exciting enough that they want to live with it.
Campbell's practical art is sold in hundreds of galleries throughout the United States and the Virgin Islands, and also in the retail store located in Cambridge Springs, just 3 miles from the production studios. For Bill Campbell, Campbell Pottery Store and Studios represent the realization of his journey from science to art and from art to science, and that's what keeps him going.
A lot of what I do is about something that I never learned in college, and that has to do with risk-taking. You know, most everything that I do here that has worked for me has a lot to do with taking risks. It's taking risks with the clay, and it's taking risks with the glazes, and taking risks with the business. And I find that kind of exciting. It keeps me going. You know, it's always, you know, every day is kind of a new adventure around here.
All across America, families are coming together around the table for tea time. Mrs. T's Pierogies, made in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania, transformed the traditional Polish dish into an all-American favorite. All around Shenandoah, Mary Twardzik, or Mrs. T as she's better known today in grocery stores, was recognized for her delicious pierogies. Her son, Ted Twardzik, took note of his mother's pierogi popularity and cooked up an idea for a new business. Ted's son, Tim Twardzik, explains.
Mrs. T's started around the kitchen table. My father came back from college and remembered that his mother made great pierogies for the local church picnics. And armed with that great marketing research, he worked for Arthur Anderson for a year, took a leave of absence. I don't think he's going back. And came back home from the University of Notre Dame with about $1,700 to make the pierogies around the kitchen table. So his parents at first and everyone else in the community thought he was a little crazy. Here's a guy who went away to college, the family saved for him, and he was an embarrassment to his family. You know, why would he come back and make pierogies? And then after several years, he got lucky because pierogies took off. But this was a guy who had in his mind that if people would stand in line at a church picnic to buy a pierogi, maybe they'd like to buy them in a supermarket.
Ted Twardzik literally started the business at his mother's kitchen table, producing piles of pierogies. Mrs. T, however, was skeptical and quickly grew tired of her son making a mess in her kitchen.
About 6 weeks into making pierogies around the kitchen table, his mother finally said, "That's enough flour dust and mess. Go down to the tavern." So they moved to 600 East Center Street, which was my grandfather's old tavern. So that's the building that's still our office today.
Mrs. T's Pierogies has grown from one employee making pierogies by hand to over 300 employees, making Mrs. T's the largest employer in Shenandoah. More than 8.5 million pierogies are made each week at Mrs. T's. To produce that many pierogies, Mrs. T's uses only the best ingredients, which include 5,700 pounds of eggs per week. That's 2.8 million eggs every year. Thousands of pounds of flour, and 295,000 pounds of potatoes every week. The pierogies are made fresh, then stored in a warehouse-sized freezer until they're shipped to the frozen foods sections of grocery stores across the country. But how exactly do they put the potatoes, cheese, onions, and other fillings into the pasta pockets?
My father, Chris Twardzik, his cousin, and Lou Hoffman basically took what you did by hand and automated it on a machine. And our machines work faster and better than other machines around the market. And it's our little edge. We've kept them secret, kept them behind the scenes.
Okay, so we may never find out how the pierogies actually get their filling, but we do know why they're so filling. Mrs. T's pierogies are low in fat and high in carbohydrates, making them a great food for athletes in training. In fact, the Pittsburgh Steelers are served Mrs. T's pierogies as an energy boost during training camp. And at PNC Park in Pittsburgh, Mrs. T's pierogies get the run of the field.
The Pirates called Mrs. T's and said, "We want to have these pierogi races, and obviously you guys are the biggest pierogi and you'd be the best to be a sponsor." And it's been a lot of fun because during the 5th inning of the Pirates games, they have a pierogi race in a jumbotron. So animated pierogies race past Pittsburgh scenery, the fountains or the bridges or the tunnels. And then they come out to the edge of the park and live characters, 6-foot giant pierogies, come racing down the right field line to first base. So you have Cheese Chester, Jalapeno Hannah, Sauerkraut Saul, and Oliver Onion are the 4 characters who race to the finish line. The pierogi characters are not told who's going to win until they actually almost enter the field, because there's betting going on, and we wouldn't want to have people have illegal pierogi betting.
One thing that's always a sure bet is that Mrs. T's pierogies can be prepared to suit just about anyone's taste.
Well, pierogies are the chameleon of food, I think. They're very versatile. You can prepare them a lot of different ways, and they're basically a pasta product and potatoes, which most people like. So we blend some fresh cheese in there or some sauteed onions or different flavors, and it seems to appeal to a lot of people. And you can't help but have fun when you have pierogies.
From Mary Twardzik's kitchen table to yours, it's clear that Mrs. T's Pierogies in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania has the tasty family meal down to a T. Take a ride into Hatfield, Pennsylvania, and just remember to keep your hands and feet inside the car at all times, please. because the ride of your life just might begin here. Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters Incorporated began in 1904 when Henry Ockey, previously a beer distributor in Philadelphia, decided to put a new spin on his career and began manufacturing carousels. The majority of carousel manufacturers were located in Philadelphia during the early century, and carousels remained the center of Ockey's new Philadelphia Toboggan Company until the Depression took Ockey's company on a radically different turn. Bill Dauphiny, co-owner of Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters Incorporated, explained.
And during Depression time, the carousel became cost prohibitive because of the expense. Roller coasters became cheaper than carousels. So roller coasters started to evolve stronger in the element of the company than the actual carousels.
Philadelphia Toboggan Company became a one-stop shop for amusement parks seeking new wooden roller coasters. The company manufactured the cars, trains, brakes, and even constructed the actual wooden structures at the parks. In fact, all but one of the wooden coasters located in the state of Pennsylvania were made by the Philadelphia Toboggan Company.
There's coasters that are still standing from Philadelphia Toboggan that they built as early as 1929 up at Doney Park. We have the ride out in Idlewild Park in Ligonier, Philadelphia Toboggan ride. We have the one at Waldemere, Philadelphia Toboggan ride on the junior coaster up there. So, you know, we're still pretty strong in Pennsylvania.
But Philadelphia Toboggan didn't stop there. At the peak of the amusement park phenomenon, the company also manufactured other rides, such as the Crazy Daisy or Cuddle Up Ride and Noah's Ark. But in the 1960s, the amusement park craze took a sharp downturn.
The family element, as we knew it growing up from the 50s out of World War II and so forth, started to change as the youth of the 60s started to become individuals. And that individuality created a conflict of what an amusement park was all about. Amusement park was for family fun and family entertainment and a way to get the family together and go do something. Well, these individuals, as they were growing up to be, separated from that, and thus the amusement park industry declined.
As a result, Philadelphia Toboggan had to narrow its focus.
We're more specific today, I think, than the company was in the past. It started out as, like I say, a multi-product company that was manufacturing carousels and other rides and other products, and mainly roller coasters and designing roller coasters, and it was a turnkey operation back in those days where you went to a company to build a roller coaster and they supplied everything. It was a one-stop shopping. And that stopped in Philadelphia Toboggan in 1970, 71 is when that stopped, and we went basically into the decline of the roller coaster world in the amusement industry as a result of the social changes. And now we've come back into where we're redefining our product as the most premium roller coaster car you can purchase in the world.
Today, the main focus of Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters Incorporated is the manufacturing of roller coaster cars and trains. Co-owner Tom Reeby explains the process.
We make several different models of cars, and the car itself is essentially looks the same, but it's just a different size, different capacity for seats. But the raw material is basically all the same. When it comes to final assembly, there's different stages in doing it. There's the undercarriage, which is essentially you got to mount all the wheels onto the bottom of the car. The seat bottoms are 5 inches thick, and mainly because when somebody's going down a hill and you're 100 pounds and you hit the bottom of that hill with a G-force of 2, you're going to be twice your body weight. So we want to make those seats as thick and comfortable as possible. An average cost on a car can range anywhere from $21,000 per car up to $32,000 per car.
Spring is the busiest time of year for Philadelphia Toboggan, as the company fills orders for new cars, trains, and parts for the upcoming season of thrills. And as Bill Dauphiny explains, there is something to be said for specializing in wooden roller coasters, as opposed to the steel giants that are primarily built today.
The wooden coaster in itself is still considered the coaster of the world. It's a traditional coaster. It has that mystique and the relationship, the mind-to-body relationship, that it's crickety, it's clack, clack, clack when you're going up, that anticipation, whereas on a steel coaster, You just kind of elevate it up the lift hill and let go and come back. Coaster changes all the time in a wood coaster because it's a natural material. It's wood, so it expands, contracts, heat, humidity, different things have an effect on it, whereas a steel coaster, it doesn't. It's contiguous, it's the same all the time. So the way we portray it is that when you ride a steel coaster, you're a guest. When you ride a wooden coaster, you're a participant, because the ride is constantly changing.
As the oldest roller coaster ride manufacturing company in the world, Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters Incorporated has certainly seen its share of good times and bad. And those ups and downs are just what they need to keep rolling. This is a story of the American dream going up in flames. It's a tale of hopes glimmering brightly, then disappearing in a puff of smoke. And it's the very reason that New Castle, Pennsylvania is known worldwide as the fireworks capital of the world. Zambelli Fireworks International, America's oldest and largest fireworks company, began with the arrival of Antonio Zambelli, an Italian immigrant who chose the small Pennsylvania town to set up shop because it reminded him of his childhood home near Naples. In 1893, Antonio left Italy for the United States, carrying only a little black book. Actually, it was a cookbook of sorts. Antonio's intention was to feed off his family's spiciest secret recipe, which called for a dash of sulfur, a pinch of charcoal, and a touch of potassium nitrate. The family's spicy concoction proved to be as American as apple pie, and soon the entire country was eating it up.
If I would take the time out and figure out how many people we've entertained over each year, it's got to be up in the billions. Right. And there isn't any form of entertainment that has a greater aggregating force than that of fireworks. Nothing. Nothing but nothing.
George began shooting fireworks at age 14 at a show at Conneaut Lake Park near Meadville. Now he runs his father's company, which boasts some of the most spectacular celebrations of this century. Zambelli lit up the skies for such landmark events as Y2K, the Desert Storm Troop return in Washington, D.C., the annual kickoff of the Kentucky Derby Week, several Super Bowls, and World's Fairs. Even the presidencies of Kennedy, Johnson, Carter, Reagan, and Clinton were inaugurated by Zambelli's resounding bang.
That way the powder doesn't work through the tie.
Fireworks have always been a family affair for the Zambellis. George's brother, Lou Zambelli, has been making and shooting fireworks for 55 years.
Like I told you, I shot for 7 presidents. I shot all around the world, and I met a lot of nice people, and I like to be on the road.
Lou now puts together over 100 bombs per day using 3 key ingredients.
Paper, paste, and twine are the most important ingredients. Okay? Because each time that shell does something different, it has to have an encasement. And then it has a time fuse on it, and that's where it becomes an engineering feat to make sure you can tie it all together to get it to do what you want it to do.
After 55 years, Lou is certainly an expert at tying it all together.
This is paste. I put that on the side. First reason to keep the bomb from bringing the paper, to leave it in the gun. So the shell goes up in the air, it'll take the paper. And I get the black powder that sends the shell up in the air. We put 2 1/4 ounces of powder and a 4-inch 1 break. What we call this 4-inch 1 break. Then we start tying the bottom where the powder's at. Now that firework knot, what we call it, it'll never come loose.
Some displays, like this one at Waldemar Park in Erie, Pennsylvania, are still fired by hand, using road flares to light the fuses. However, only a limited number of shells can be fired simultaneously during a show such as this. For more elaborate displays, computers and electronics are used to remotely fire the shells. Zambelli's technicians, called shooters, often train in their craft for several years.
Fireworks shooter takes training. There's no book. You can't learn it from reading a book. You got to really be involved. As those shells leave those mortars, there's a certain vibration, a certain noise, a certain explosion that occurs that you got to be there to feel it. And maybe that's what they love. My father often said, and he's correct, it takes longer to be a good fireworker than to be a doctor.
But it's all worth it to the employees and to George Zambelli to watch the big payoff. The family business, which began with Antonio Zambelli and his family's little recipe book, now shoots thousands of shows each year across the country and around the world. Even Antonio's son can't help but be amazed when he reflects on his father's dream and his own tremendous success.
I often wonder, what would he say and what would he do if he knew we are the size that we are and what we do and so forth? You know? It's just amazing.
Thousands of celebrations, 6 continents, 1 city. Thanks to Zambelli Fireworks International, business in Newcastle, Pennsylvania is booming. This is Pennsylvania, the birthplace of products which do much more than simply put food on the table. Pennsylvania products are beautiful and functional. They light up the eyes of children and the eyes of collectors. They light up the night. They give heroes a lift, and they lift all of our spirits. When it comes to manufacturing, one fact will always ring true. America's favorite products are made in Pennsylvania.
Funding provided by the Pennsylvania Public Television